got no other. My mama taught me how to land on my feet. I have this way of finding trouble. It's never far. Wherever I go, take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Well, I woke up this morning with the devil knocking on my door. Well, he came without warning with a deal, you know, I just couldn't ignore. I do believe, my pretty lady, that it's time for me to move along. Take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! I feel naked in a cell. It's cold and dark as hell. So vulnerable, got nothing else to say to you. I feel wasted all the same. You go back, come again, making nice with the other guys after what I said to you. It's not I'm against you. I just wish I was against you. With us lying down upon each other's side. Funny how it feels when the water's on the other side. Funny how it feels when the water's on the other side. And I remember standing tippy-toe
because this craziness, this sickness in this country now is shot through the whole society. You know, people in law enforcement have also succumbed to right-wing extremism and white nationalism. Again, what this points up is how pervasive and vast a problem this is, and we will be dealing with it for a long time.
I said, something's wrong here, something's really wrong, can't have happened, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. As this enormous crowd shows, we have truth and justice on our side. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania. And we're going to the Capitol. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, we're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I want to thank you all. God bless you, and God bless America.
Oh, hi there. How's everyone? I'm well. I'm super good. Life is fun, all that kind of stuff. I have a brand new exciting backdrop today. You'll notice it's a corner. My eldest child that lives with me is playing Halo, and I was like, you know what? I can probably stream not where he needs to be playing Halo so that he can continue to play Halo and shoot people and defend theocracy and whatever else that Halo people do. Hi. It's good to be here. I'm not terribly hungover after exploring scientific realities of life last night. If you're not aware, I decided that I wanted to see if there was a reaction that could be identified from the consumption of alcohol on persons' political leanings, lib-left. It was worse. I went from being a libertarian social, I speed ran the test at the start of the broadcast and was a libertarian socialist, which is exactly how I see myself. And then at the end, after half a bottle of Bumbu XO, I was a libertarian communist. So I got more left wing, more nasty, more totalitarian regime-y. It was pretty fucking awesome. I was worried that I was gonna come like get drunk and be like, I fucking hate everyone. It's stupid. And then you took the test. Oh, what did you get? I'm going to guess that you got like a libertarian. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm definitely not surprised there. Just like a garden variety libertarian, or was it left leaning? I think of you as more left than liberal, but not more. Yeah, just off center. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't call you a centrist, but I would definitely say you're not about to start a violent revolution to overthrow anything. I am Canadian. It's good to see you, my friend. Yeah, it's been a hot minute since last night. So I did end up having a really good long sleep. I also had that fun thing where in the middle of the night you, yeah, Happy New Year to you. I'm old, so I suffer from the acid reflux, and in the middle of the night I decided it would be fun to get just a little tiny little bit of vomit into my sinuses, because why wouldn't I? So woke up, dealt with that, enjoyed all of the fun that is for us olders. And then went back to sleep, slept gloriously, woke up, zero hangover. I'm very, very content with the fact that as a old and broken man, I still managed to not have brutal hangovers, despite drinking half a bottle of Boom Boom XO and a whole fucking 2 liter of Coke. Bile and sinuses is painful. Yeah, McDonald's is also a cure. That's because of the salt content. A lot of people say there's no such thing as a hangover cure. What I get is I get logy if I get anything, just sort of lazy and not wanting to do anything. And I found that the cure is, if you think about the various scientific bits and pieces, drink a Powerade, eat a banana, and take Advil Sinus. And then you're fucking dead on balls, good for the world. And that seems to help for people I know who have, far worse hangovers than I. But science was one. Now, obviously, it needs to be peer reviewed, so I suggest everyone run out and do their own experiments to validate my findings. Greetings, She Loves Puns. Happy New Year to you as well. Oh, there. Hi, She Loves Puns. Good to see you again. You were here to witness the debacle that was last night, and it was super fun. I had a pile of good times there. I see there's a couple of faces in the chat. Hopefully, if anyone is a new viewer, you enjoy, and you click on that follow thing on the Twitches, or if you're on YouTube, you click on the subscribe thing. I'm not big enough to get paid, so it's not like I'm going to do hype trains to get lots of money or anything like that. I'm not that guy. What we are going to do today, first off, as I always do my weekly humiliations, did I say anything imperfectly, not politically correct, under the influence, Jim? Did your inner authoritarian come out? I don't think so. If I said there was a conversation that was fully inappropriate. My youngest child came home sloppy fucking drunk, and we got to listen to him vomit while I streamed. That was fun. But he proudly proclaimed that he had engaged in an interesting form of group sex that night. And I was like, okay. I think I said something along the lines of, I hope it was with Alec Baldwin. But yeah, that was the only really gaffy part of the night. The rest of it, I was just my usual charming self, but just a little bit more charming and a little bit more unusually usual. But it was fun. I had a good time. And yeah, definitely review the science. Is it group sex if I use both hands? Yes. Yes, that is definitely, multiple digital partners. So I think that counts. So yeah, one of the things we are going to do at the end, we always do the karaoke moments. And in this case, I'm going to, at the request of I Am Canadian last week, he said that I should do one of the songs from one of my old bands. So I'm going to do that. I have a service that I use to split vocal tracks out of recordings. That is fantastic. So I have split Keith's voice out of page 29. So you will hear me sing the old Keith Morrison band song, page 29, which is one of my favorites. I hope I don't suck, because that one would be completely terrible to ruin. And I'm going to do a couple of other karaoke songs as well. What did I choose? Let me just quickly check. Sea of Love by Marty Wilde and Livin' on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. Obviously, one of those is going to be fantastic, and one of those is going to be fantastic. So that should be fun. And yeah, one of the things we'll do is we're going to go through the Xanderhal Britney debate on immigration. And we're probably going to do that fairly quickly, like as in soon. It will take a while because there's a lot that's said, and I feel like there's a lot of interesting points that, no offense to Xanderhal. Xanderhal's a really good debater. I think he was legitimately caught off guard at just how dumb Britney's points were, and Britney's thing is she's so I'll give a little backdrop. Britney is the left-wing host of a program called Politically Provoked. It is a debate channel that sometimes is on Discord, sometimes is on Twitch, sometimes is on various places. And they very strongly believe in giving voice to all parties. So they don't have a problem, if a Nazi's going to want to debate, they will give that Nazi space and allow him to debate someone loud and on the left kind of thing. The problem is there's not a lot of legitimate stuff that they do. What ends up happening is you have, Kitty Jerkface, you say perfectly, my right hand is left. In a room full of active white supremacists, Britney is probably a very left-leaning voice. But in a room full of humans, not so much. So they constantly lose platforms. They constantly, because they have a lot of white nationalist voices on there, and it turns out that's not always the best thing to do. So part of, I think, a combination of the frustration of trying to run this thing, and also the frustration of, or sorry, not the frustration, but the reality of being surrounded by right-wing talking points so often has quote-unquote red-pilled Britney a little bit. And so Britney has recently started talking about how it's really frustrating because she's now feeling more right-leaning, and won't some sweet leftist come along and take a chance on me and help me see the reality of things like immigration. And that really comes down to she just doesn't want to hear it. So she doesn't want to hear it. I'm going to say it anyways, because I feel like there's some really good stuff here. 1 second. Hey, Jake. Yeah. You know how you're shooting your airsoft gun? Maybe you could, close your door while I'm streaming?
Oh, I didn't know you were streaming. Sorry.
It's okay. Parenting. I'm so good at parenting. Yeah, he got some money for Christmas and he decided to buy a airsoft gun. And I was like, you probably shouldn't do that. You shouldn't shoot it in the house. And what he does is he like sticks it on his bed and shoots it at his bed, which doesn't damage the bed and just makes him feel like a straight up gangsta. My right hand is a liar. Kitty Jerkface, harsh. Perhaps your right hand is just misinformed, ignorant, stupid, and easily led. As is a Christmas story tradition, he's going to shoot his eyes out. And I'm fine with that. We have universal health care, and if he winds up with a lifelong, patch or a glass eye or whatever, like, okay, you made some choices there. When that happens to people who like, through car accidents or other kinds of things, that's terrible. If you lose an eye because you're a dumb shit, okay. I'm okay with that. So anyways, yeah, let's pop into this. It was originally on, I'm gonna switch my view so that y'all can see stuff. It was originally on, Modern Day Debates, and I'm gonna try and like, it's 2 hours long. We're not gonna do the whole thing, but we'll do it until I start to repeat myself, which will probably be almost immediate, but hopefully not. All right.
Hey everybody, tonight we're debating immigration, and we are starting right now with Brittany's opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us, Brittany. The floor is all yours.
Okay. All right, so I did write something up. I don't normally like to read things because I'm a little blind, but I'm going to do it anyways. So before I give my opening, I just want to say I'm not normally on this side of the debate. In fact, this is my very first debate.
Yada, yada, yada.
So this will be a new one for me. Hoping Xanderhal will be kind enough not to use those crafty little boots open board. One of those is supposed to ever take
There we go.
office.
Okay.
I supported basically every left-wing policy you can think of. Open borders was one of those things. I've gone through a lot of the same views as most lefties have, and one of those has been the white guilt that we see everywhere. So I thought getting straight white men out of power would be a good thing, and white men have just been horrible for us. Then came the red pill and a guy named Little Timmy. Now, I'm hoping today Xanderhal might be able to unred pill me, because I've been looking for somebody to do that, and as of yet, nobody has managed to get it done. So maybe you can be that guy.
Okay, just for the record, I don't know if she's going to explain it or not. I don't recall, but the Little Timmy thing is this incredibly racist thing. Not guilty, judge, privileged, not guilty. So the Little Timmy thing is a thing that white nationalists will say, and it's like, let's talk about Little Timmy. Poor Little Timmy. He's the only white-skinned child at his school, and this is the world that Joe Biden's America wants, for whites to be the minority. So Little Timmy is now the victim of racism, but it's not even racism because of the power dynamic. And so it's okay for us to murder Little Timmy. Is that the world you want to live in? And it's a completely stupid take, because there are plenty of scenarios where there are like white children in schools who are a minority. There are plenty of scenarios where that plays out just fine. And making systemic decisions to continue or birth control related decisions or whatever to ensure that there's never a Little Timmy is pretty fucking gross. When the opposite idea being, hey, maybe instead of doing things to knock down the people who we're oppressing currently, maybe the answer is if we just do better and work together and try to actually make a working society, maybe Little Timmy won't have such a hard time. All right.
If you don't already know who Little Timmy is, he is a hypothetical
here we
character of what happens when white people become a minority. So basically, he is now the only white kid in a class of blacks, Latinos, and all the other groups we have living here. And every single minority group seems to have some sort of grievance against white people.
Little Timmy
and
should
why
go to
shouldn't they,
Catholic
given our
school,
history,
right?
everything we are being pumped with, slavery, Jim Crow,
And aren't these the
CRT,
homeschool people?
all the horrible things white people have done, and all the anti-white rhetoric that's going through. And it's basically mainstream now. So it's not going to be good for Little Timmy when he's the only white kid.
So this is the thing,
and
right?
I don't think
this is the thing, the anti-white rhetoric, which is basically mainstream now. Well, no, it's not remotely. But if you're saying that and not being challenged on it, well, I guess you're right then, aren't you?
White people will be given the same protections as minority groups currently have. Because most of the sentiment you hear is, oh, well, they have it coming. So if it's like that when we are still the majority, what's it going to be
Can't
like when
scream at
we are
home.
the
There's no one to
minority?
hear you. At least Catholic school,
That
God
kind of
will know
stuff
what
really
they've done to
concerns
you.
me, and no one has been able to address those concerns or ease some of those fears. So again, maybe Xanderhal will be able to change that, as I'm open to hearing it.
No, you're not.
One thing we can say is white people becoming a minority is basically inevitable at this point. So for me,
So, I'm gonna tackle that particular comment right there. White people becoming a minority is basically inevitable. I absolutely think that that is the case, and I don't think that that is a bad thing. I think, if you want to go down that road and be like, well, then the little Timmy thing, maybe the answer, as I alluded to, is making it so that people don't hate white people for the things that we continue to do. That might be a decision point. That's, to me, that's the most obvious thing on earth. But Britney just doesn't get that. She just is accepting tacitly the idea that if white people are the minority, then all the other races will gang up on us and bully us and take our lunch monies. And most people don't care unless they are white nationalists. I think there are people who are not white nationalists, but people like Britney who hear these talking points and go, "Oh my God, like that really is scary," because they actually aren't thinking about what it, why it matters whether or not whites are the minority or not. Actually, they hate our fucking guts, but since we're in power, well, it's one of their favorite go-to slogans. Or maybe we let the assholes do things we should speak up. Maybe I think you mean when we let the assholes do things we should speak up about it. Yes, absolutely. This is the whole point of you can look at the world and say, yeah, clearly there are people who are, white people are going to become a minority, and we should stop this and destroy it. Or you can look at the world and say, white people are going to become a minority. Before that happens, let's fix our own fucking world so that maybe people aren't quite so quick to treat us the way we have historically treated them. That's a thing. Is she sharing the talking points? How is it different? Yeah, exactly. All she's doing is basically reading all of the cliff notes of politically provoked debates. When we're the minority, they'll gang up on us. Perhaps projecting what would happen if roles were reversed today, i.e. maybe we should be nicer and less fucked up with minorities. Fear is well deserved when you behave like an asshole. Yes, exactly.
I want to slow down the process as much as possible, and closing the borders is a good first step. Now, personally, I don't care about a multiracial and multicultural society, as I don't have...
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Closing the borders, for the record, the concept of closing the borders is extremely detrimental to the U.S., using the American system. Closing the borders is super bad because, A, America, whether it likes to admit it or not, relies on immigrant labor in a huge way, including illegal immigrant labor. And I've told this story before. I was at a after party with the people from the city of Los Angeles at this geek convention I was at. And they asked me, well, what's the deal with, should we be getting rid of the illegals? It was during George W. Bush's second run for election, and the illegals word was the one that they were all using. And I basically said, how many people are you talking about in the city of Los Angeles? And they said, we think it's around, I think, 1 million people. And I was like, okay, how many people in the city of Los Angeles are people who are landed immigrants with appropriate status are unemployed? And they're like, well, it's around like 5% or 2% or whatever the number was. And I was like, so that's basically like the number that you would expect in any society where you have a certain number of people who are simply not going to be employed. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so you have 1 million jobs that you would not be able to, or 1 million people mostly fulfilling jobs that you wouldn't be able to staff if they weren't here. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then you've answered your own fucking question. What you need to do, if illegal is the concern, is give them a path to citizenship. Can we get more Europeans and less Africans? Please, asks Britney. Yes, exactly, right? I just want to slow things down. I'm not scared of a diverse and multiracial thing. I just, am terrified of a diverse and multiracial thing. $20 salads when your illegals no longer work in California. Ralphie Mary diatribe. Exactly, right? The whole concept of illegal immigration is, I'm an open borders guy. I'm not an open borders tomorrow guy, but I am an open borders guy. I feel like the concept of borders are stupid, and I feel like immigration is a net benefit to just about every group. The only exception is a temporary thing for the poorest of your local residents that are here from before. And that group generally tends to do better as well by then seeking educational opportunities. Illegals are taking our jobs. One earth, one energy, borders are ideas. Yeah, exactly. And dumb ideas.
Have any of my own issues with anyone else, and I have no hate in my heart for anyone. I wish it wasn't like this, but this is the reality, and a multiracial society has not worked. Lefties love to paint this ideal world we wish we lived.
A multiracial society has not worked because America is doing so gosh darn poorly and has for the last, 400 years. The reality is that there's a lot of problems with a multiracial geography like the U.S., but that doesn't mean that they're problems that were caused by the fact that there's multi-races. They're problems that are caused by the imbalance of power. And as that power imbalance resolves itself more and more, those problems get eased. That's a thing. The human race can work just fine, biatch. Then go back to Europe. North America didn't start as a white country. That's my favorite thing. Like, the whole concept of the Great Replacement. And I'm like, dude, what do you think the indigenous people felt like when we showed up? Do you think they were like, yay, sitting around going, oh, and one day, indigenous people are not going to be the majority and we need to close our borders? That's not what happened. Because that was a ridiculous concept at the time. This isn't new. Loads and loads of places. Fiji allowed, they had really open immigration, and the native Fijians became less in number than, I believe it was Indian or Pakistani immigrants, and there was a huge nationalist outcry. I don't really know the details, but I remember people like talking about, Fijians don't have and I'm like, well, no one gets to just like, this is our land and we get a better say than anyone else, even if there's more of you. That's not how the world fucking is. I don't think I should watch this. I'm starting to get too riled up for a Saturday afternoon. Self-care says I should sit this one out. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you next time. Kitty Jerkface, you take care of yourself. I know you will. I know you know yourself. So love you, and I hope that we will see you again soon. But I totally get why this could be a little frustrating.
Lived in, but that doesn't tend to align with reality. And when you point those things out, you are called a racist, a Nazi, or a bigot, instead of just pointing out uncomfortable truths. Perhaps I never took any issue with this because I wasn't able to see the damage it was actually causing until someone pointed it out in a way that made sense. Not to mention everything that happened with
Until a Nazi kid told her about little Timmy. That's what we're saying.
the summer riots, which was also a huge wake-up call that made it clear to me I just don't like the direction things are heading. So as I started to think about it more in conversations, I just don't. Not to mention everything that happened with the summer riots, which was also a huge wake-up call that made it clear to me I just don't like the direction things are heading.
So she's referring to the Black Lives Matter riots. And I suppose there's like an argument to be made that if that is the direction things are going, that we're going to have violent riots, that's terrible. And if you stop thinking right there, yeah, that's an awful thing. Or you could choose to think for 7 additional seconds and go, wait, why did that happen? Why was there riots? Was it because, I don't know, a whole lot of people had very strongly held beliefs about the police stop killing me? Might be a thing. How about we resolve that problem and then we don't have this as a direction? Like, what a stupid fucking point. I love how they're all listening and not interrupting, no matter how vile or stupid the debaters debate. Respectfully, I'm hoping respect for this format, not the issue. So here's just to explain. They're doing opening statements. So the guy on the top right here is Xanderhal, and he will get to do his opening statement after Britney. Britney is first, and this down here is the moderator. His job in this is really only to speak up if things are going super south, and then this is just an ad for another debate. So it's just the three of them, and the format is Brittany gets to talk, then Xander gets to talk, then James will be like, "Oh my God!" and all of the great things we can. Okay, but you're gonna do the open floor.
So as I started to think about it more in conversations I've had with other lefties, that kind of future became a pretty easy thing for me to see happening. Why we have so many white liberals pushing this narrative is beyond me. And I wish more lefties would wake up to how dangerous some of the rhetoric is and the kind of damage it is causing. But I used to be one of those lefties. So until someone can unred pill me, those days are over, and it's time to close the borders. Xanderhal, you are up.
Thank you very much for that opening, Brittany. And want to let you know, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral platform. Of light, Lucy debates come of, or I should say, Daniel Hika, and you all yours.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have much in the way of opening statements. When it comes to a situation like this, as Brittany said, the influx of obviously non-white people into this country and many other white countries is going to continue to happen just naturally. This is the way that humanity has acted for a long time. We're going to integrate. We're going to intermarry, intermingle and whatnot. It's just something that's going to inevitably happen. I think the main issue that I have with Brittany's entire argument is that the onus is on her to prove that this is a real problem that's actually happening. The reason why I struggle to create an opening statement, I guess, is because there's not much that I feel like I have to argue from the get-go, right? Immigration is good. It's good for the economy. Seems that exposure to people of different races and ethnicities is good to prevent racism. Seems to help our society. You mentioned that multiracial societies haven't worked. I'm not sure if you're aware, but America is the most successful country on the planet and is quite multiracial. Yeah, that's...
I would add one of the things that made Rome as successful as Rome was Rome's approach to nationalization of conquered peoples. And doing the things they could to, I mean, yeah, they took slaves, and I'm by no means an expert here, but they also made a lot of citizens who were not Romans, and basically were, they did the thing where they were like, hey, if we make you just as evil and corrupt as us, you're not going to want to change the game.
Really all there is to say. We can go back and forth if you want. I wrote down some of your points, and I guess if you want to, we can go one by one.
You got it. We'll jump right into open conversation then.
Did you want to address something in specific I said, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to start with the little Timmy question?
Sure.
Yeah, so the funny thing about the little Timmy question or the little Timmy hypothetical is it's not even really a hypothetical. Stuff like that happens on both sides today. There are black students who are made fun of in majority white schools or whatever, and there are white students in majority black schools that get made fun of for being white. I don't know why you use this hypothetical or this little Timmy question as an example of how racial animus in this country could just suddenly flip sides and we could see an anti-white society. It just doesn't really seem like we're heading down that road. That kind of thing happens now. This seems like if you want to prevent a problem like this, the solution is exposure. People who are exposed to people of other races more often tend to be less racist. What you're advocating for, a shutdown on immigration, a slowing down of the integration of different races and ethnicities into our society, is only going to result in more racially based tribalism. It's only going to result in more of that racial animosity. Things like Jim Crow and things like segregation only increased the amount of tension between the races. It didn't make things better.
Do you think there is no anti-white hate that goes on?
And this is an example of how people who don't know how to debate. Do you think that there's no anti-white racism? That's a stupid point. Of course there's anti-white racism. And there is, very dangerous anti-white racism. It's just not significantly a problem. And it's not the default state of people who are not white. So I have, for example, a lot of friends who are not white, and who wouldn't be interested in putting me and my people in camps. or segregating away from me and my people. People who just, are friends of mine, and then they are good and we're good. And like, it's a very, very small number of people who actually would qualify as anti-white racists. It's like hoteps and people like that. Yeah, interrogation isn't building your argument or position. Absolutely. Yeah, it's bullshit framing. And that's the thing is, what she's hoping is that he'll say, well, of course there's anti-white racism. And then she'll be like, see? And therefore, all of the world is exactly as I've described, and little Timmy will be murdered.
Of course there is. Matter of fact, I've been debating a lot of these people, and funnily enough, you mentioned that it was mostly white liberals pushing this sort of anti-white narrative, and I think we disagree on a lot on what this anti-white narrative may be. But one thing I do want to point out is that there are people that I call out that claim to be on the left who are absolutely anti-white, and I think also anti-black. I think if you are racist towards white people, if you are against the idea of races integrating, then you are just as much a danger to the rights and the liberty of white people as you are to black people. An example of this is hoteps. Hoteps are radical black separatists who want an ethno-state and will work with neo-Nazis to achieve it. I think that type of behavior, that actual anti-white racism you see from that group, is not coming from white liberals at all. They hate liberals. They hate BLM. These contemporary left-wing movements that are advocating for racial justice have little to no connection to actual substantial groups that push anti-white hate. Is there white guilt out there? Are there cringy people out there who behave in a certain way because they're white and give black people a pass on anything? Absolutely. And I think on a case-by-case basis, it's worth working against those people. But to just put up a shield and say, no, we got to stop immigration, we got to cut down on it, we got to stop this white replacement thing, which we can get into more in a minute, because I don't even agree with the theory there. I don't know, it just seems like you're going about solving this potential problem in the exact wrong way.
And that's exactly true, right? The idea that there is or could be people who are not nice to the honky folk doesn't mean that means the future is defined and that the world will be a brutal shit plan environment where, the whites are bullied on the playground or whatever. Addressing that by separation or by stopping immigration or by domination of minorities or whatever is exactly the wrong direction. And I don't know why that's so hard. Fifth column. I've heard the term fifth column. I'm not sure I know exactly what it means. Hotep's fight column, prevent loss of power and control, close borders now. Yeah, exactly. Closing the borders gives us the impression that we are actively doing something to stop the ever increasing tide of badness. But you know what? Something I'll point out to Britney, the people who are scaring her so much, doing these horrible summer riot things, those weren't illegal Mexican immigrants. So closing the borders isn't going to have dealt with that. And the cops in Los Angeles who were doing things like, killing black people, triggering those riots, were not doing so trying to police the border. These are two completely different things. Closing the border doesn't address any of the problems, whatever your take on them, that are scaring you. It's not going to change white liberals who hate whiteness. That's, closing the borders has nothing to do with that. Fifth column is any group of people who undermine a larger group from within, usually in favor of an enemy group or nation. Oh, okay. I like I said, I heard the term, but I wasn't sure what it meant. Thank you. I am Canadian.
How is it the wrong way? I mean, again, because it's literally mainstream right now for you to be anti-white.
It's literally mainstream for you to be anti-white, yes. It's so mainstream that Hassan got banned from Twitch for a week for saying the C word. It's so mainstream, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is fragility. And saying that it's fragility in Britney's mind is an exact example of, but you're being against me.
White, it's okay. Like, you see it
Can you
everywhere.
give me an example of mainstream anti-whiteness?
Wasn't that like in like the in the Coca-Cola meetings or something they were talking about. I would have to actually like look this up, but I remember there was an article about how they were talking about anti-white stuff. I have a bunch of quotes actually that I could pull up too if you want to, that are very mainstream.
I was handed a whole series of talking points.
I mean, you can criticize any individual case. That, like, I'm fine with that. The problem is that you're broadening this to be a massive issue at the left.
It is.
Like, the entire idea behind at least what I advocate for is a rising
actually have to look
tide
it up.
raises
You
all
mean be
ships.
prepared.
We're not trying to take white people out of power.
The reality is that it's not even that she's not prepared. It's that she's going to be looking to her chat, which is going to be full of white nationalist dudes going, you know, give me examples. And they'll be like, Pepsi Cola or Coca-Cola had a meeting and they had a whiteness training seminar. And it was all about how whites are bad. And then she'll be like, oh, that I'll mention that. And then say it. And then when Xander's like, do you have what they said? Well, I mean, I could look it up. It's not even a question of being unprepared as much as doesn't know and is relying what her chat is saying. She'd actually have to look it up. Stupid lunt. She is definitely a stupid lunt. I don't know what a lunt is.
Replace them with black people in power. We're not trying to take white people out of the country and replace them. I'm sure you've got plenty of examples of people on the left being either enabling anti-white racism or even perpetuating it. Why not call those instances out individually?
Let me just show you a few examples of like how mainstream it is and how.
This is the thing. A second ago, she was like, well, I mean, I'd have to look things up. And now she's like, do you want me to give you examples? Because her chat has fed them to her.
Okay, it is. So you had, let's see here. We got from the Don Lemon saying white men are a domestic terror threat. Anderson Cooper, whites becoming minority is an exciting transformation for our country. Van Jones, even the most liberal, well-intentioned white person has a racist virus in his or her brain that can be activated at an instance. John Brennan, I'm increasingly embarrassed to be a white male these days. I mean, I can keep going on and on.
Hold on. You don't have to read me quotes.
Well, I'm just telling you that it's this like literally mainstream. Hold on, this is literally mainstream to be anti-white, and if it's way when we are the majority, what is it going to be like when we're the minority?
Don't you think that maybe the tendency for people to engage in rhetoric that maybe pokes fun at or is sometimes even hostile towards white people might be because our society has come to an understanding broadly
she's definitely a shitty
the amount
debater.
Of objective harm caused by jokes or comments at the expense of white people typically don't have that same outcome. I think that's why you see a lot less. Hold on. I think that's why you see a lot less pushback against that kind of thing. Is it okay? No, I don't know the context of every quote that you just listed to me, but if the context is as you said it was, then I don't like any of those people and I don't like what they said. And you can call those people out on their individual, like what they've said. But I don't think...
Yeah, this is the thing. It's definitely a yelling match. And my goal here is to provide my take on what she's yelling. Because even if Britney and I were talking, she's not going to listen. She's just come to an opinion, and I think that she learned to close her mind off by being a little debate star. Not that she's a debater, but as a moderator, and is literally just like incapable of understanding the concept of a conversation versus a argument with a winner.
There's a trend in the left to be anti-white. I don't think it's nearly as big as you're making out to be. And trust me, listen, Brittany, I get called no-lip white boy by hoteps and literal anti-white racists every single day. Hoteps are a radical group of usually black activists that typically call themselves black separatists. They're in favor of a black ethno-state, and they're willing to work with neo-Nazis and white supremacists to achieve it.
So maybe
they typically hate Jewish people and stuff like that. They're basically black Nazis.
So basically, these are people that are also looking out for their own self-interest and realize that being around people that are going to hate them is not really working out for them either. I mean,
I love, he's like, this is what a hotep is. And Brittany's like, oh, wow, they make my people in other colors. Like, what the fuck? Well, maybe they're people that realize being around people that don't like you is a problem. yeah, that's exactly what they are. And much like you, their solution is, I want nothing to do with you, rather than, like, let's figure this out. Let's do better. We can all do better.
I don't know if that's technically a horrible thing. I think maybe it's just kind of, self-preservation on their own parts. And
I mean, I don't know what hating the Jews and claiming that
I don't know
what's her name? What I'm trying to remember her name. She was in the Holocaust. She was in the attic. She wrote the book. Anne Frank. Yeah, Anne Frank. They hate Anne Frank. Listen, all right, I'm tired, okay? They hate Anne Frank. They think she was a fake Jew and deserved to die in the Holocaust. I don't know what that has to do with self-preservation, but
well, yeah, I don't know about all that, but I have seen some of these like black nationalists who kind of push for a lot of the same things that some of the white nationalists will push for, where they want to separate. And I don't know if that's such a bad thing. Why live with people that hate you?
This is exactly, like, you can't call yourself a lefty when you're like, maybe white nationalism and black nationalism, maybe it just makes sense. Maybe you shouldn't, like, no, it fucking doesn't. You dumbass. She spent more time on her appearance than she did on critical thinking and debate prep. Yes, because the one of those things is actually in her control. As a big dummy, she's not capable of actually doing debate prep or thinking critically. Here's the thing about the establishment of an ethno-state. Yes, that is a solution to the problem. If you think about, like, raising my kids, the solution to some things is go to your room. And that is a valid solution in some circumstances because it allows for time to calm down and it prevents any further escalation. And yep, that's exactly right. But does that solve the problem forever? Do I say, okay, you can only leave your room to leave the house. I will bring you your food, but this way you can never encounter your sibling. Or do you wait for tempers to cool down and then say, okay, let's figure this out. Who was right? Who was wrong? Where can we have done better? All of that kind of shit. Because this is the thing. Let's just pretend that I established a rule in my house that said my children had to be in their rooms only and they could never be around one another. That's not going to fix things. That's going to create genuine hate and resentment. And the more that person is trapped in their room and their room is imperfect, the more they're going to blame the other person for the situation. And that's what we're talking on a national perspective. Let's say, okay, you know what? We'll make a spot in the U.S. that only white people can live in. And anything goes wrong in that spot, it will be viewed by the white people in that spot as an attack by the outside. And the hate for the outside will increase, and the threat to the outside will increase. This is a stupid answer to a fairly simple question. The question is, how do we get along better? And the answer isn't stay away from each other. It's work together.
I mean,
do you think white people hate black people?
I think that there are a lot of problems that happen in this country due to a multiracial society that we can't address because there's so much infighting. I was looking up, actually, for this debate, I was looking up what the 10 happiest countries are. You want to know what they are? Can I give them to you? I'm going to give them to you anyways. All right.
Sure, they're like Scandinavian countries, right?
I'm going to do it, Xander. So, number 1, Switzerland. Number 2, Iceland. Number 3, Denmark, Norway, Canada, Finland, Netherlands, Sweden, New Zealand, Australia. Do you sense a theme there?
I sense a theme. They're all cold. No, that's not true. Australia's in there. Yeah, they're all former Commonwealth. No, they're not, because I don't think... Yeah, there is no theme. The theme that she's going for is that they're white, and that white people who are primarily white have better lives. Because Canada is obviously not anywhere near going through the similar kinds of great replacement conversations. Canada is definitely not on the list of places where white people will become a minority. What she's failing to understand is that all of the countries that she listed off are social democracies that, to varying degrees, have done a lot to improve the conditions of all people in the country. Now, all of those countries probably need to do better. Canada certainly needs to do better. We need to do better when it comes not just to our Indigenous, but also to, you know, our Black communities are typically not starting from the same equal footing as white communities. But in Canada, our Indigenous are, you know, far more beaten down by the system before they even start. So yeah, it certainly is true that we need to do better. But the fact that, you know, white people have the power in this country isn't what makes this a country where people are by and large happy. Same with Australia. Australia, I think it has a lot to do with really fucking gorgeous weather, not being a Nazi playscape, and you know, surfing and stuff. I don't know. Switzerland, everyone's happy because they're Swiss. They eat cheese all day. Like, I don't fucking know. But they're all social democracies. They are all looking after their people to varying degrees. In the U.S., you know, it is technically a social democracy, but only just fucking barely. And that's the kind of thing that would go a long way. Social democratic programs and policies would go a long way to relieving the little Timmy problem, much more so than banning immigration.
Yeah, so most of them are social democracies with a lot of.
Oh,
yeah,
there you
but
go.
maybe they
Access
are
to
like that
sa-
because they're
secure
also
social
homogenous
safety net.
countries that are able to address a lot of those issues. You know that? Do you know there's studies that show when you are scared, you become more conservative. When you are liberal, you're going to become.
What did she say? I'm confused here.
Countries.
A lot of.
Yeah, but maybe they
access to
are like that
sa-
because they're
secure
also
social
homogenous
safety net.
countries that are able to address a lot of those issues. You know that? Do you know there's studies that
Able to address a lot of those issues because they're, I think she said homogenous. No. The only thing Canada does, like, yeah, I hate stupid. This is just hard. Like, it's not that we're homogenous and therefore, like, we're not homogenous. We're a mosaic, and we have all kinds of different people living all kinds of different ways, and that's fucking good. And we allow for that, and we do, or at least we should be doing more to try and build all of those peoples up. I legit don't have a clue what the fuck she's trying to communicate here. Yeah, a narcissist like her should simply be ignored. I agree. The purpose in my doing this is to shout down what she's saying and present alternatives that show that this is a stupid take. Because people, when you listen uncritically, you go, oh, wow, I did not realize that the whites were under such a tyrannical threat. And I think that's far more dangerous when it goes unchecked. I'm good with your purpose, Jeem. I'm just frustrated to listen to stupid. I totally agree. Just quietly sitting here, breathing in and out to maintain sanity, listening to people like her. Exactly. And she claims to be the leftist, right? Okay.
that show when you are scared, you become more conservative. When you are liberal, you're going to become.
Yes, and people are afraid of the unknown, and what you're advocating for is to make brown people more unknown to white people, and vice versa. What you're advocating for, all the data and everything that we've collected having to do with exposure to other races has shown that contact with people who aren't the same race as you, it just explicitly, just massively decreases the likelihood of you being racist or holding racist ideas. Like what you're advocating for right now will only make different races more afraid of other races because they're going to be more unknown.
Or I mean, I get that at this point there's nothing we could really technically do about this.
Wrong. This is exactly the problem. This is someone being presented with a complex situation going, well, therefore it's impossible, rather than going, well, how do we solve this? How do we break this down into components that are maybe easily solved? And how do we start building solutions together to amass a solution to the bigger overall problem? When you go, wow, this whole race thing is hard, I'm just going to stop. Then you're just bad.
I'm not somebody who's saying, oh, let's go round up all the people that are different races or whatever and send them back. I'm not. I'm realistic. But I do think that we can kind of slow down the process of how fast this is happening, because what's happening, and I'm noticing it big time, and again, I know people don't believe me, but I really was left wing. I was very left wing, and I had all these policies. I was for open borders. I didn't see any problems with it.
Yeah, she's not saying round up all the different races, because she knows that would be like, there's no coming back from that sentence. The thing is that when she's like, oh, maybe we should stop having like open borders and we should just close all the borders and stuff, she's not addressing her point, right? Because there are people who live inside this country who are continuing to have babies. And, you know, if you were to completely remove immigration, it will not change the fact that white people are not replacing themselves, and therefore would presumably wind up a minority. It might slow that down, but this terror future of hers isn't fixed by her solution.
The riots that happened that kind of like freaked me out, and then hearing it in a way that really did resonate. But what do you think is going to happen when you are bringing in all these different people and you are teaching them how bad white people are and all the bad things that white people are? And do you think that they're not going to end up hating white people?
What are they teaching in school that you think is making people hate white people?
So I was actually, so every time I talk about critical race theory, I'm getting different definitions. I feel like maybe that's somewhat to do with the fact we live in a country where every state kind of teaches things differently, so you don't really know exactly what each state is doing. But I did.
Okay, before we get further down, I'm going to take a quick break. I will be back in a moment. I will play some lovely, awesome, crazy, cool music. And I will be back with more of this exciting debate. Suddenly you need some of my rum. Well, I still have half a bottle. So, and a case of beer, which I mostly didn't touch. I had one beer afterwards because it was, it was good. So I'm gonna pose it to you guys. Do we want to continue with the debate? Do we want to just sort of talk about the stuff that we heard? Do we want to talk about something else? I'm open to suggestions. And I'm out of coffee. I'm going to quickly run. And I don't think I have any coffee, so I'm going to grab a beer. I'll be right back. Chat. Do the chat thing. And chat didn't reply. That could mean a lot of things. You know what? I think I'm done with the debate. I don't think that there's any further excitement or value that we're going to get out of listening to Britney fail to understand that she has not taken the red pill, just, in fact, just become a white nationalist. There's no winning there. So, yeah, I'll sum up my thoughts on it. The whole concept of the ethno-state shit, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't create an environment. It solves the immediate problem of I don't want to be around people what ain't like me. But what it does is creates a scenario where more and more isolation exists, more and more fear of the unknown exists, and anger boils over into bigger problems. So all of this talk about a white ethno-state or a black ethno-state or a Jewish ethno-state or whatever, they don't work. They're not gonna work. And they don't solve the problem that people think they solve. All they do is make you feel a little bit better about not having to be around people who ain't like you. And fuck that. That's not good. It's just not good. If you think about it, I think honestly, it was sort of spur of the moment, but the comment I made about parenting and putting kids in their room is a really good analogy for this. If you say to your kids that they can never encounter one another and that they have to live in a separate space, it doesn't make them get along better. it breeds that animosity. And that's what an ethno-state's going to do. So it's a stupid argument. Closing the borders doesn't resolve the problem that Britney has identified. Because the problem isn't that there are a bunch of illegals coming in and therefore joining Black Lives Matter and having riots. Though the problem that led to all of these riots is systemic problems that need to be addressed in the way that non-whites are treated by the white primarily system of control and authority. You can dislike that, by all means, dislike away. But these are the things that are facts. And Canada has less serious problems in that regard with the, like if you look at the protests we had this summer over things like Black Lives Matter and Indigenous Lives Matter, they were typically far less violent, largely because we don't have the same level of racial animus. I guess we kind of do. What we don't have is as loud a voice of the angry white folks screaming about the how these people are all terrorists. We certainly have that, but it's a smaller contingent. Here in Canada, we have our patriots who are super unpatriotic. Kevin J. Johnson just got arrested sneaking into the States trying to avoid going back to jail because he's a bitch. There were fires in Canada this year. I don't believe we have an answer as to who started the fires, but they were largely blamed on Indigenous people when the bodies at the residential schools started to sort of take hold in the news. The fires were several Catholic churches, often on Indigenous land, being burned to the ground. Now, it is certainly possible that this was the act of angry Indigenous people. And if that was the case, I kind of get it. And I will not tell you that was an evil thing or anything like that. It's a fucking building. And it represents a whole lot of pain and suffering. And I get why people who are feeling that pain and suffering would lash out. Fuck yeah. Was it morally right? Fuck, who cares? Morally right really doesn't matter in a scenario like this. To me, and that's one possibility. Another possibility is that it was done by the white nationalist groups as a way of sparking their little helter-skelter world they want. Yeah, I've heard the suspects were doing it to get Indigenous to be blamed for it. I've heard that too. I don't, like I say, I don't know what actual truth there is to any of it. I would in no way be surprised if our quote-unquote patriots were doing this as a way to raise racial tensions between Indigenous people and white people, and to make white people more afraid, because that's an effective tactic that these people have used many times in the past. So I would in no way be surprised by it. I would probably be more surprised if it actually was Indigenous people who like a group that was actively trying to do this kind of shitty behavior. I'd be stunned by that. To me, the most likely answer is it probably was individuals. And again, I know nothing about this. If it was Indigenous people, it would have been individuals who are frustrated on an individual level and going like, you know what, fuck, I don't even know what to do. Fucking, I'm burning this shit down. Is that right? Probably not. Did it change anything? Definitely not. The amount of pain and frustration, particularly around residential schools and missing and murdering Indigenous women, yeah, I fucking get it. And there have been no end of white folks specifically and purposefully doing things to cause problems there. Things like somebody was setting fire to, like, there was a whole bunch of pairs of shoes to represent the lost children from the residential schools. I think it was on City Hall. I don't recall. And someone like spray painted them. Someone tried to set fire to them. Like, this shit is happening. And that was a white fella or a white person. I don't know if it was male or female. This is a thing. When Indigenous people were protesting the Coastal GasLink in the summer, Coastal GasLink being a pipeline that does not have the permission of the people to go through the land that they're going through. They went to, I'm assuming they went to chiefs and council. They didn't go to the hereditary chiefs, who are the people who were supposed to make that agreement. Blah, blah, blah. The people are protesting, and they're saying, no, this isn't okay. And white folks were like, we should just drive over them. Because that's not how you make things worse at all. Closing the borders won't change people who live in the U.S. who are not white being angry about the system. If you close the borders and say no more illegal South American, Mexican people sneaking across the border to steal our gerbs, then that will have no impact on police violence. Why do you hate your own race, Jim? I don't. I just know that we could do better. And this is why I'm a progressive. That was my inner Britney. Yeah. It's funny because I have known people who went down this rabbit hole for almost my entire life. I remember I think I was 18 years old, and I blinked one day, and a bunch of the kids that I used to hang out with suddenly became Nazi skinheads. And they were all hanging out at Northland Mall, which is where we all hung out. And literally, almost overnight, several of them were white supremacists. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? And I was talking to one of them, and he's giving me all these fucking talking points. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know what you're saying. You're literally, someone has said stuff to you. And he points at the Chinese restaurant, fast food place in the food court. And he's like, they wouldn't even hire a white person. And I was like, did you even apply? Are you really saying that because you didn't get a shitty fucking minimum wage job and an Asian person did, that therefore Asians have all the power and the white man is like, oh, come on, dude. What the fuck? And it ended, he made some comment about China. If China came in, and took over our country, I'd stand firm and fight them. And I was like, well, first off, China's not going to come in and take over our country, not with an army. They will take over it with an economy, which is exactly what they are doing. And that's the more pressing reality, is economic problems caused by the power of China as a country. As a military might, there's just not that. Second off, if they attempted to have a military takeover of Canada, I feel like America would probably put a quick, fast stop to that. I don't think that's a reasonable scenario. Third, as a communist, I'd be like, yay, communism, which was a joke, but a joke intended to get the desired result, which was exactly what I got. He was like, oh my God, you're a goddamn pinko commie. And I was like, yeah, dude, I am a socialist. You know where I work. You know where I live. Anytime you want to come get tough. And keep in mind, this is back when I was 130 pounds of skinny, worthless, useless. Had he decided to fight me, he would have won. And had him and his friends decided to fight me, they would have won. But I was not eating his shit. I've been dealing with these people for fucking ever. And what they seem to miss is that there's nothing in their sentiments. It all starts with that basic presumption that the way things are is how things are supposed to be. If you take that perspective and then you look at the replacement rate of white people and you go, oh my God, we're going to be a minority. If you start from that place of the way the world needs to be is honkies in power, then yeah, that's scary. But if you start from the perspective of, okay, well, currently white people have power and have not, done badly in a lot of ways, but have done awfully in some ways. who turned them? They didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm a Nazi. Who influenced, who pressured? There is actually, I know what happened. There was a kid that moved into the neighborhood who was, he was a kid that grew up in Montana, and his parents were members of the Aryan Nations Church down there. And when they moved, when he moved in, he was a kid kind of like them, you know, a little bit of a weird outsider, because all the people I hung out with were like the metalheads and the punk rock kids and stuff. And, you know, he came and he had all the talking points, and he talked about things, and, you know, things were, there were so many easy inroads for him to convince them that they were being picked on for their whiteness instead of for their laziness or their whatever. And yeah, they were frustrated middle class white kids in a world that had definitely othered them, and he was right there to be like, hey, this isn't your fault. You're not the problem. The problem, like, you don't have a job? Look over there. There's a Chinese restaurant. There's not a single white working there. You can tell it's part of a great sinister cabal. That's the thing, man. And then he, you know, point at the A&W and be like, see that guy that's the manager? He's gay, and we know he's gay. And that's the thing, is that all of the people who have all the power aren't you. You're a good white person, and you don't have a good job, and you aren't making millions of dollars. Sure, you don't deserve it. You haven't done fuck off anything. But, you know, why do they get all the breaks? All the breaks, like working in a fucking fast food restaurant in a shitty mall. But yeah, these people bought into it, and they all left. They all stopped buying into it. The last I heard, the guy that I had that conversation with, the last I heard about him was that he was marrying or engaged to a woman who was, I believe, half black, and they were sharing a place with their gay roommate and stuff. So clearly, I guess he got over some of his shit. But that's the thing, is when you find people who are in that place, the statement in the debate was absolutely correct, that when people are afraid, they become more conservative, and when people are comfortable, they become more liberal. I do agree with that. Fear of the unknown being what it is. But when you are, you know, like these kids we grew up in a neighborhood that was surrounded by a lot of rich neighborhoods, but we were not rich. And these kids were not, you know, from wealth, and they were frustrated. You know, all the other kids in our school are buying motorcycles and, you know, with matching leathers and all this shit, and, you know, nice cars and doing all the fun things, and we're hanging out in a fucking mall like mutants, sitting in the smoking section of the food court, chain smoking, 17 people sitting around a single large Coke. You know, like that was my fucking youth. And it's easy to feel that sense of like, you know, things aren't fair for me. It's just wrong. It's incorrect. So yeah, they absolutely had a person who came along and pushed them in that direction. And it wasn't overnight. But what happened was I didn't see it happening until it was already happening, right? I imagine the conversation started a lot smaller than that. And this kid, you know, he knew he was doing the Lord's work in the Lord's way, you know, slowly convincing these people that they were being victimized rather than that they were just stuck in a bad situation. It's so much easier to blame your problems on other people than to take ownership of them for yourself. I have this whole half thought out arc that I want to do on here one day, talking about like how to meet the ladies, because the pickup artist thing and the you know the accompanying culture of incels and pickup artists and you know, all of these really toxic perspectives all sort of fundamentally hedge on the idea that the fact that you aren't being touched isn't your fault. It's the women or the society or the chads or the whatever. And nah, dude, self-improve. Work on you. Be the best goddamn version of yourself you can. You will like yourself better. And the chances are people will see the changes in you and be like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. I really like that. And people who meet you will be like, oh, what a neat, interesting person. I'm kind of curious about what their genitals might taste like, or whatever the fuck, right? But it's so easy to just, I don't have a thing I want, and other people have it, so therefore there's a giant, horrible conspiracy to prevent me from having it. No, dude, that ain't the world. It's a very, very simplistic and very foolish take. And like, bringing up little Timmy, it was a great example. My buddy teaches in a school in California that is, I believe the school he's at now is primarily black kids, very disadvantaged area. He's taught in schools that were primarily Latino and primarily black, and yeah, there's a whole lot of problems with racial stuff in those schools, and a lot of like genuine anger. And being in it, he has trouble sometimes not seeing it as an us and them kind of thing, because he in that spot is an us, and them are scaring him. The thing is that one moment in time group of people doesn't speak for black people, doesn't speak even for black people right now. It's a very specific group. You have and I don't have, therefore I shouldn't have it. Shouldn't have, or it should have, or it isn't fair. Sounds left to me, Gene. It's true. I am spouting the leftist rhetoric right now, which clearly, as a white, makes me a race traitor or some shit. But yeah, like I get why he can feel that way. But you can say, you can look at that situation with frustration and say, like, there's nothing I can do. And that's oftentimes, I think, how he feels, because he's in the heart of it, and it's difficult and scary. And, the little Timmy scenario, little Timmy can't make the world a better place. But maybe we need to make the world a better place for not just little Timmy, but all the other Lils that are out there who may or may not all be honkies. Someone looked at his situation and used them for their own benefit. He's a sheep that got shorn. Yes, absolutely. The little Timmy thing is, it's not even good rhetoric. It's just a lazy allegory of, what did we do? There was a debate between Professor Flowers, not a debate, more of a conversation between Professor Flowers and Vaush. And Vaush gets a lot of shit for this debate, but I think the one thing that I didn't like about it was he kept going back to the idea that, like what happens if there's, a violent reaction for example, if you say, okay, Indigenous people, we're going to give you, we're going to meet the demands of land back. And how do you then stop Indigenous people from being angry and rounding all the whites up and putting us on reservations or whatever? And it's just not a real thing. That's, how do you stop that? By building proper relationships and by proving yourself to be a good neighbor. And ironically, the Indigenous folks tried to do that when all this was going on in the beginning, and we just kind of like didn't let that happen because we were not good neighbors and we took over. So how do you get him first and use him better? South Africa is an example of desegregation. South Africa is absolutely an example of desegregation, and there are still huge race-related problems in South Africa, of which, by the way, I am not an expert, so I could be saying stupid shit. My understanding is that there were very bad things that happened in South Africa after the end of apartheid. I don't think that the society in South Africa had done enough to support and raise up the indigenous black people who lived there. And as a result, when it was like, okay, fine, you have power, there were a lot of people with really, really angry feelings lashing out because they suddenly had the ability to do so. Again, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, so I could be very wrong here, but I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation if you don't. If you take someone who has never had power and suddenly give them power, they're probably going to react poorly. That's why, if that is the accurate reflection of what happened in South Africa, that's why it's an example, but it's an example of how to not do it right. I absolutely agree that they needed to end apartheid, and I absolutely agree that they needed to do a whole lot of work. My problem is I don't think that they did enough to avoid the negative ramifications. I don't think they broke down the barriers between those two people. They just suddenly said, okay, and now everyone is equal, and that didn't cut it. So looking at Canada, for example, I think the thing that is starting to happen, and I just think it's starting, is building up Indigenous people and giving them a voice. And I think we're doing this in really, in some ways, really, really half-assed, or ineffectual kind of ways. And I think in some ways we're doing this really well. And I think it needs to continue, and it needs to be that we can build up those communities, help them to become more. I don't know. I'm saying this wrong. It's not that we need to help them be more white. I don't mean that in the least. Looking at, for example, Siksika, they have a decent amount of money as a nation, which I believe largely comes from the fact that, yes, more independent, exactly, giving them more economic power. So the economic power that they currently have, from my understanding, largely comes from selling oil and gas rights to industry. And that to me is problematic because it creates a dependency on exploitation of the environment, which I don't think is what the Indigenous people from Siksika want. But there's a certain rob Peter to pay Paul kind of vibe where, if you want to have the money to do things, you're going to have to play the game a little bit. I don't think that's the right answer. I think if we help build them up as a community and give them access to resources for things like mental health care, improved social services, lots of social spending to invest in programs that empower them on an individual level and give them the ability to sort of deal with some of the past wrongs that they're currently dealing with the relationship between things like the residential schools. When you do things like that, you create a scenario where the people are built up stronger on an individual level and on a group level, and they have the ability for more economic power, more self-governance, and giving them more of a voice. There's not a single, from what I recall, let's just check, because I could be wrong. Let's Google this. I'm going to go to the old browser view, and where's my browser? There it is. Okay. Jump over to Google. How many Indigenous Canadians in government? No, that's not the answer. Not the answer. Okay, I must have phrased this wrong. Indigenous. Fuck, I can't type. Canadian Parliament. There have been 39 Indigenous people who have served as MPs, as well as 17 who have been named senators. Provincially, Indigenous... So list of Indigenous politicians. After the 2015 Canadian election, the highest number of Indigenous persons were elected to Parliament in history, with 10 MPs, which is 3% of the House of Commons. And of course, indigenous people make up more than 3% of the population, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just Canadian population, indigenous statistics, 4.9%. So if 3% is currently the number, it's lower than their overall representation in the society. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you get my million head point, I think. Oh shit, am I dropping? It looks like I'm having some network issues. Looks like I've got good connection. I had some dropped frames, and it says that I disconnected, so I have a feeling like something bad just happened from a networking perspective, and now I'm back. So hopefully you are too. If I look at my list, it says everyone's still connected. I could be wrong, but we'll just continue on. Anyways, my point being, representation by population, rep by pop. There's a Vimeo link here that I Am Canadian sent. What are we looking at? Economic reconciliation. That looks interesting. 23 minutes long, but I bet, you know what? I bet this will be a worthwhile watch. Let's bring that up. Where's my... Oh, for fuck's sake, how do I use this video? Just gonna say for personal use. Fucking hell. What brings you... I came here to discover and watch videos. That's exactly... Thanks for joining the high quality home for Oh, for fuck's sake. Try Vimeo. Oh, man. Vimeo wants my money. Apparently, I'm part of an amazing community of more than 10,000 or 10 million people who upload videos. Can I just fucking go to this link, please? Is that a thing that we can do? Alright, theoretically... Oh, I gotta fix my... And suddenly, I'm crashed. It looks like I'm crashed. I have 0 KB per second. I am not sure what the fuck's going on. Oh, hey. Apparently I have returned. I don't need to sign up or log in. I don't know what just happened there. Something went awry. I'll try this. Why is this thing suddenly not recognizing? One sec. I had some challenges a second ago and they seem to have been flusterpating. Okay, this will work. I'm gonna do this and we'll watch. I hope that this works. Okay, I'm gonna hit play and we'll go through this and see what we're seeing. It's 23 minutes long. That should work. Truth and Reconciliation Commission was part of a settlement of the largest class action lawsuit in Canadian history. Yep, that's true. Lots of Be Real. I have a feeling like this is going to get a copyright note, but we'll find out. Just gonna check. So is this
We
video...
call upon the corporate sector in Canada to adopt the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a reconciliation framework and to apply its principles, norms, and standards to corporate policy and core operational activities involving Indigenous peoples and their lands and resources. This would include, but not be limited to, the following. 1. Commit to meaningful consultation, building respectful relationships, and obtaining free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples before proceeding with economic development projects. Recently, as a result of some court decisions which have pointed out the need for Indigenous peoples to be consulted before things happen in their territories, corporate Canada has said to governments very loudly that we need to have some certainty with respect to our ability to do our business in the lands of this country. And so we call upon you, government, they said, to resolve these land claims, to resolve these protests, to resolve this resistance. And so in some ways, it's the leadership of corporate Canada and the influence of corporate Canada that has resulted in government having to take action. There's also been a growth in the social conscious and social awareness of business leaders who recognize that engaging with Indigenous partners and Indigenous employees in areas where there is an Indigenous presence is also to their advantage. But sometimes they've done it without considering the history of this relationship, and sometimes they presume that Indigenous employees or Indigenous people are no different than any other people in Canada. And they need to understand that when Indigenous people come to the conversation with them about their wishes as business leaders, that they're going to come with a unique set of requests and in a unique perspective. And what we're saying in Call to Action 92 is you need to begin to recognize that. And you need to engage seriously in that conversation because you have influence. You have influence in this country. You have the ability to change the way government thinks. You have the ability to contribute in a positive way to reconciliation if you choose to. And if you choose to, you need to do it right.
They're fair size already, these ones.
Yeah, these ones come in at 38 grams.
Okay.
Wouldn't surprise
This site here, this Buzwa Fisheries site itself is one of the largest aquaculture sites in Ontario. On an annual basis, they're harvesting a little over 2 million pounds of fish. The areas that they're supplying are the large grocery store chains that are feeding our people in this province and beyond. So we know that it is working because not only are we feeding others in the province, the people working here are also feeding their own families.
There's so many opportunities in every sector for Indigenous businesses to partner with mainstream companies in corporate Canada. Now, oftentimes we see, for example, in fisheries and aquaculture, we have a really strong background in those fields amongst Indigenous people.
If you look at prior to European contact, our ancestors were never lazy people. They were always hardworking. They never stood with their hand out looking for somebody to come along and rescue them.
It's an interesting thing that just made me think from the stuff that they're talking about. I remember seeing an article quite a long time ago about there was a group of Indigenous people in BC, and they had exclusive rights for fishing of the salmon in a particular area. And what they had done is they came up with a really interesting solution where they didn't want to overfish. So instead what they did was they took seaweed and they put it in the water, and essentially something about the process, like they knew what they were doing, and the seaweed would gather up a lot of the eggs, and then they sold roe on kelp to the Japanese markets and made huge fucking money. And it was just a clever, like, they understood how to do this. they did so in a way that didn't, in fact, negatively affect the salmon population, and allowed for them to use a fairly, I believe, fairly traditional process as a sort of business opportunity, economic power, all that kind of stuff. It was really, really cool. And yeah, what we're seeing, I think, is some examples of where Indigenous people have had the opportunity to make some real headway economically, and to create projects that are often more sustainable and better than us honkies do.
Both had solutions that everybody had a role to play.
Throughout the mid-1800s and prior to, our community were supplying a lot of the fish that went down to the fish markets in Chicago, New York, Toronto, Cleveland, Detroit. Shortly after the Crown governments, they had started instituting a permit and licensing system where they began leasing out the commercial fishery to non-Indigenous people, and it had a detrimental impact on that economic activity that was sustaining our communities here for generations. It virtually excluded us from continued commercial operations.
Currently in Canada, there's about 50,000 Indigenous businesses spread right across the country.
If we truly want to honor our ancestors, then we have to be hardworking like they were. But in the modern day context of getting an education, seeking employment, becoming a contributing citizen, and helping to rebuild the nation together.
If Indigenous people were hired at the same rate as mainstream, and if we were allowed to achieve the same level of education that you have in mainstream, and had the same type of training that mainstream people have, we would be helping to contribute $27.7 billion to Canada's economy. That's larger than most economic sectors in this country.
That's phenomenal.
This issue of how do we get the people with the necessary skills in Canada is going to be of growing importance in terms of our whole economic success as a country. Well, we're very fortunate that if you take a look at our society, we have a large group of people. The single fastest growing contingent within the population of Western Canada is Indigenous. And this is a resource that we should be seeing, that we can tap into, can help us to grow our economy, to make our companies successful.
God, I hate when these people talk, the middle class, upper class white folks, and they're like, yeah, hey, it's really cool that the Indigenous people, like they're doing really well, and surely there must be ways for us to exploit that. Like, dude, I don't know if you know what reconciliation means, but okay.
This is particularly the case for the resources sector. It means that we have to invest more as a society in terms of ensuring that Indigenous Canadians are able to complete their education, and we have not done a good job to date in terms of ensuring that the educational completion rate among the Indigenous populations is as high as it is among the population as a whole. We need to do better.
Yeah, I would add the reality that a lot of whether it's Inuit or Indigenous First Nations people or what have you, a lot of them where they live in reserves, or in the case of the Inuit in small towns, throughout like Nunavut and shit, the education that is readily available to them is not even like get you through high school level. And the quality is such shit poo garbage that it's no wonder that there's serious difficulties that are faced by people growing up in those communities. My buddy grew up in, I believe he was in Siksika, and was told like, yeah, dude, if you want to go to high school, you can't go to school here. Or was it Gleason? I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, basically told, if you want to go to high school and you want to like go to a high school that will allow you to get into a university, you have to live off res. And he ended up moving in with a family in Strathmore just to be able to get a high school education that would be suitable for him to go to university. Like, that should not happen. That's just wrong.
Reconciliation is so important to us, and it is about achieving balance, just like the financial ledgers say. And achieving balance really means looking at all angles. It means understanding.
You close your door, dude?
Everything we do in this country, we need to be thinking about how are we going to empower the Indigenous community with an economy that they're going to back, that they're going to supply the workforce, that they're going to supply the businesses, that they're going to be equity position shareholders in some of Canada's largest projects. If we don't find a way to create an economy by developing our own source revenue, we're not going to be the successful country that we can be.
I agree with the points, but it's so frustrating. And maybe it's just because we're looking specifically at call number 92. Maybe this is the purpose of this. But it's so frustrating to hear that this is sort of perpetually being talked about from an economic perspective. Absolutely, we need to level the playing field economically, but there's so much more that needs to happen. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is, let's take a quick look. Truth and reconciliation. Call 92. So this is business and reconciliation. We call upon the corporate sector in Canada to adopt the United Nations. Okay, so this is specifically about business. So I'm being unnecessarily shitty. Hey, Edmonton.
There's a lot of negative stereotyping of Aboriginal peoples at the workplace that at Syncrude that we just proven are just not simply the case. For example, often you hear they're not reliable or they go off the job for no reason, and that's just not the case. The group of employees at Syncrude that had the lowest rate of absenteeism was a group from Fort Chipewyan, and it was 1.1%. That's absolutely unheard of in the industry, and it certainly was by far the best attendance record on the Syncrude site. So the negative stereotypes that are associated with Aboriginal people need not apply.
I think that corporate Canada has a responsibility for creating opportunities for Indigenous people right to the higher levels of where they are. Right, instead of trying to get a few people working in their workforce and putting them at the entry-level positions, the opportunities need to exist where we're at the boardroom table, because that's where we can be really
totally
effective. So when they're sitting around saying, well, what do we do? Well, you have somebody who's going to actually encourage activities that might have a higher level of success, right? So I think corporate Canada needs to not only partner with Indigenous community, but they need to create within their own structures opportunities for Indigenous people to be able to succeed there.
All right, I'm going to jump out while I've got the opportunity. I'm going to jump out and consume some carcinogens as horrible people do. I'm going to keep the video playing, and I'll be watching on my phone while I do so. But I do feel like there's far less need for me to be pausing and rebutting or whatever. This is more informative, and I actually really like this video. So, despite my objections about the fact that it's economic in nature, but I was wrong, and I own that. So I will be right back, but I am following along, just as you all are.
Here's our lower subdivision. In the back there, that's our golf course back there. Our mall,
yes, we can work for corporate Canada. Yes, we can be entrepreneurs. Yes, we can be managers. So once you get to know us, we're going to be, utmost hospitality. So there's a lot to benefit from it. A lot of undeveloped land, and a lot of Indigenous communities sometimes, don't know where to start, and who can I trust to tell me, is there a gas station go here? Should we agriculture this land? Should we leave it because it's sensitive cultural land. Once you get into one little area, I think it's going to open up into other areas.
The way I like to frame it for corporate Canada is the First Nations and Métis people are not asking for a handout. They're asking for a hand up.
That essentially is the vision of reconciliation, where we have our First Nations people being given real opportunity to create their own destinies through those partnerships that are created with many of the corporations that are operating in our territories, and regardless of what sector they're in.
I think the corporate world can provide an example to the government, as well as doing their own reconciliation in the way in which they execute on their strategies and plans. But they can influence the government by way of example and also by way of discussion and openness to reconciliation. I think the government will pay attention if the corporate world embrace truth and reconciliation.
The highest level of trust is partnership. It's a two-way street. The trust has to be both ways. And the highest form of that trust is partnership. And that's what we ought to strive for. And if we do, we will be successful.
Being a First Nation in Canada, we're the first people here. We have an inherent right to govern ourselves. We have a treaty relationship with one of the best countries in the world, Canada. And you know, the opportunity's there. It's just that I'm taking my job so serious that I'm going to be that nudge driver to take houses from one level to be one of the greatest in Canada, just like how someone would speak of Osoyoos or Whitecap. I want houses to be in that category.
There's a model here that we have a lot of other First Nations that come and visit us or ask, to come and speak in our community about our experiences, because you can study things in classrooms and that, but to actually do it and negotiate and set precedent and open doors for others, that's important for us. As First Nations communities right across this country, one of our biggest challenges has always been the Indian Act. The Indian Act was never created for us to be a part of the economy. It was actually created to keep us out of sight, out of mind, while every other jurisdiction around us had the opportunity to build infrastructure, economies, jobs, opportunities, and even hope. And we've always wanted to take our rightful place and be a part of the economy.
Economic reconciliation is about sharing resources, is about sharing wealth. That's what our treaties were made on. They were made on sharing our resources, respecting each other's governments, and having that relationship based on respect and reciprocity. We've lost that path.
When First Nation communities grow and when they build their economy, the whole region benefits from that. All the funding and the dollars, the employment income that is spent in the surrounding area contributes so much to the economy. A small place like Manitoulin Island in Northern Ontario contributes $83 million a year to the local economy.
The biggest hinder and negative is the Indian Act. And when you flip something, it takes about 5 months to a year. And business, the ship sails within weeks sometimes. Like, it's just so quick of a market. But you have to understand that when it comes to the land, there's certain laws that benefit business in a whole, but there's also a patience needed sometimes that you're not going to flip it as quick as you would off reserve.
That's the great thing about going down the road of developing your own land code and eliminating 25% of the Indian Act and actually self-governing your land, so that we can have that capacity to move with the speed of business and not wait for government, because it's a long process and it takes a lot of time.
What's your role today?
As we move down the road of expanding, we now have 650 jobs in the community. We have an unemployment rate of about 5% in Whitecap, about 500 people commuting daily from Saskatoon to come and work in the community. About $100 million of investment to date, about 1.2 million visitors, coming into our community. When First Nations are successful, the whole region is successful. You see that here, this community, you measure that. Like I said, 500 people commuting daily to come here to work and living in Saskatoon. So everybody's winning when the First Nations are enabled to be a part of the economy, and that means investment. That means, because it's 141 years of Indian Act, so government's got to say, well, actually we got to start investing in these communities, getting them infrastructure capacity they need so they can open their doors for business. And when we do that, we all win.
When we go to university, we get to develop an understanding of what's important. Why is land important? What's the importance of land to us as an Indigenous person? And we're also learning about. There's a whole level of communications there that I believe, if we're going to ever see some form of economic reconciliation, there has to be a better level of understanding and acceptance and awareness of our pursuits and of our rights, and really trying to get to a place where we aren't celebrating somebody's success because it's so rare, right? We need to get to a place where we see communities and individual entrepreneurs success as the norm.
Yep.
So now the challenge is to actually re-embrace that original relationship that we had and find ways to rekindle that. Because when we look at the Aboriginal economy today, we are in around $30 billion. And about $12 billion of those dollars are coming from Indigenous entrepreneurs. But when we get those relationships right, magical things can happen, not only for the Indigenous communities, but for all Canadians.
There has to be a real shift in how corporations engage with First Nations and really effectively engage, rather than just doing it because it's going to contribute to them getting a contract.
That is something I absolutely agree with, and I'm actually really quite passionate about. Companies have historically looked at diversity in a very, very wrong-headed perspective. Like, oh, we're supposed to be diverse. Okay, we'll work on like hiring ratios or whatever. The company that I currently work for, which is not without challenges, has a very, very high Indigenous employment footprint, and that's something that they're very proud of, and it's also something that's I think just very important, especially when you're working in spaces with a lot of Indigenous people living nearby. Like, these are the things that you can do to raise people up and to hopefully, try and improve the quality of life for people. So I just think that's an important thing.
As time has evolved and case law has evolved through Supreme Court rulings over the last number of years, and the First Nations peoples of this country have truly been granted that specific interest in development of lands in their territories. And from that guidepost established by the Supreme Courts, those discussions are more than duties to consult, more than duties to accommodate. It has actually framed that discussion now into equity positions into corporations as being socially responsible in that regard, to allow some of the employment opportunities to not only be just for laborers in those organizations, but also into management and executive positions.
We didn't ask for this. We didn't ask to, we take all of our lands away and take our natural resources away and don't let us be part of the economy. We didn't want that.
The very basic principle for reconciliation involves the recognition and realization that Anishinaabe peoples are tied to the land. In our languages, regardless of which language, indigenous language across the country, there are no words for ceding or surrendering.
Mm-hmm.
The closest word that can come up is in relation to a sharing.
We want to take our rightful place and be a part of the economy. We want to be equity partners. We want to own large-scale projects. So we need to work together to make that happen. And when we do work together, we can make a difference together.
We're at a crossroads in Canada. I think the most important thing is to understand that all of us have a role to play, that it's not somebody else's issue. It's an issue where government, the private sector, the educational sector, Indigenous peoples themselves all have a key role to play, and it won't be successful unless each of us assumes our responsibility.
With corporate Canada, certainly it's very important to even just to look at the 94 recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. How can you make change together? And by making change together, it benefits everyone.
It's going to take a lot of discussion, it's going to take a lot of building relationships, and from there the path will identify itself on how those relationships can evolve into true working relationships to address economic development in each of our regions.
The future is bright, and for people who want to work on economic reconciliation.
So, message there from I Am Canadian. I don't know if you caught earlier references, but the Indian Act is still the biggest barrier to doing business with Indigenous stakeholders. The government is in the middle of, and speed of business and opportunity, yes, those are perhaps loaded terms, need to go away in favor of allowing them to do business. Their point, not mine. The Indian Act was never structured for participating in the economy. It was to beat the Indian out of them. Absolutely. The Indian Act was, every time someone's like, show me a single racist piece of legislation, you can't. Well, the Indian Act is a great example. And I believe that the Indian Act was passed at the time with the best of intentions. The problem is that those intentions weren't the best, period. They were the best that maybe honkies were capable of at the time, but they were shitty intentions. And when I say that, what I mean is, I think that the prevailing belief at the time was, we're doing them a favor by helping to, get breed the Indian out of them and make them more like us. And that's wrong and evil and dumb. And, yeah, the Indian Act is just fucking terrible. It was never designed to help them participate. It was very much, and as was the treaties that preceded it, they were designed to subjugate and to isolate and to ultimately chip away at Indigenous culture until there isn't one, and it's just another type of being a Canadian, which is the farthest thing from Canadianism that you can get. I love talking about how we are a cultural mosaic, because I think we forget that. I think we forget that one of the things that makes us different as a country is making space in the big picture for all the different things in their own uniqueness. And I think that's fucking gorgeous. Yeah, exactly. Intentions from violent racist people. So, yeah, exactly. Can't recommend this book enough. 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. Interesting. I'll have to take a look at that. Because, the Indian Act was an awful piece of legislation that I think is still largely, there's been revisions to it, if I'm not mistaken. But it's still largely in place as like the Indian Act is what created the chiefs and councils. And like the Coastal GasLink is a good example of how that's problematic, because essentially the Wet'suwet'en had their hereditary chiefs who were in charge of all of the things. And then the Indian Act said, well, you have to have an elected chiefs and council. That's who the Canadian government will deal with. And so when we're interacting with the Canadian government, that's just how you have to do it. So a bunch of nations basically said, fine, we'll have elected chiefs and council, and they can handle the government interaction pieces, but the hereditary chiefs will still be the hereditary chiefs. And that created a disparity of leadership, and it created situations where Coastal GasLink can go to the chiefs and council and get all the necessary permissions and feel like they're doing all the things they're supposed to do, only to find out that, nah, you fucked up, and now there's problems. Summary here, but I strongly recommend you read the book. Tell you what, after we finish the video, I'll bring up a summary, and yeah, that'll be a good plan.
The door's wide open, bringing that strength, that spirit of our people forward along beside mainstream Canada can only benefit this country and benefit everybody. And I think it'll be that balance that we're trying to achieve for true reconciliation to occur.
Oh, and that was the end. That was really good. Yeah, I put it on YouTube because that's what I had open during my little step outside, but I wrote a comment there. It says, like, it might be worth making these a regular feature, something to consider. So I Am Canadian had mentioned that there were several of these videos, and maybe this is something that we should do on the regular, is go through these videos. I'll see what I get in terms of if I get in trouble from YouTube for having put this on because of copyright issues or whatever. I hope that's not the case, but it's entirely possible. And something is loading, so we'll stop that. And I want to go to the summary page here. And then switch views so that you can see what I'm doing. This view, go here, there we go. All right, 20 things you may not know, 21 things you may not know about the Indian Act. It's been in place for 140 years. Indian Act has been a lightning rod for criticism and controversy over the years, widely attacked by First Nations people and communities for its regressive and paternalistic excesses. That sounds very Canadian. For example, status Indians living on reserves don't own the land they live on. Assets on reserves are not subject to seizure under legal process, making it extremely difficult to borrow money to purchase assets, and matrimonial property laws don't apply to assets on reserve. The Act has also been criticized by non-Aboriginal peoples and politicians as being too paternalistic and creating an unjust system with excessive costs that are considered uneconomical. The Indian Act gave Canada a coordinated approach to Indian policy rather than the pre-Confederation piecemeal approach. The great aim of our legislation has been The great aim of our legislation has been to do away with the tribal system and assimilate the Indian people in all respects with the other inhabitants of the Dominion as speedily as they are fit to change, stated Sir John A. Macdonald racistly in 1887. This is a great sentence. Our goal is to do away with the tribal system, the one that, that they've always lived under, and assimilate them in all respects with the other inhabitants of the Dominion as speedily as they are fit to change. What a fucking statement. The Act imposed great personal and cultural tragedy on the First Nations, many of which continue to affect communities, families, and individuals today. Here are 21 restrictions imposed at some point by the Indian Act in its 140 years of existence. Okay, so, denied women's status, introduced residential schools, created reserves, renamed individuals with European names. So far, we're nailing it. Restricted First Nations from leaving reserve without permission from an Indian agent. And this is an example. This is one of the Department of Indian Affairs. I can't really read that, but November 1st, 1932, Edward something, number 125, is permitted to be absent from his reserve for 2 weeks, date from hereof. Business, I can't read the handwriting, but and he's permitted to carry a gun, folks. He's got a piece of paper that says he's allowed not to be in his home for a while. Isn't that kind? What a fucking thing. So this was a 2-week pass for Edward Yayakikut. I probably am saying that wrong. From the Saskatchewan Archives Board, this is one of the few remaining passes found in the Canadian Archive, and it's proof of the pass system implemented in 1885. The policy controlled the movement of First Nations people off reserves. So enforced enfranchisement of any First Nation admitted to university. Could expropriate portions of reserves for roads, railways, and other public works, as well as move an entire reserve away from a municipality if it was deemed expedient. That's an important one. So they basically, the Indian Act, so in our treaties, we defined the land. And then in the Indian Act, we're except where we feel like we want it. And that's law. We made an agreement, and then we made a law that says, I don't fucking care. We could lease out uncultivated reserve lands to non-First Nations if the new leaseholder would use it for a farming or pasture. So in other words, we could just use the law and go, yeah, you're not using this space, so someone else will. And that never ends poorly looking at you, fucking Oka. Forbade First Nations from forming political organizations. Oh, that's good. Prohibited anyone, First Nation or non-First Nation, from soliciting funds for First Nation legal claims without special license from the Superintendent General. This 1927 amendment granted the government control over the ability of First Nations to pursue land claims. That's a hefty little number. Prohibited the sale of alcohol to First Nations, prohibited the sale of ammunition to First Nations, prohibited pool hall owners from allowing First Nations entrance, imposed the band council system, that's the chiefs and council thing I was talking about, forbade First Nations from speaking their native language, forbade them from practicing their traditional religion, forbade them, and that was all done under well, but you're savages, and your religion is clearly stupid, so why don't you just try Jesus out for size? He's a fine fit for all people. Forbade First Nations from appearing in any public dance, show, exhibition, stampede, or pageant wearing traditional regalia. That is balls. Declared potlatch and other cultural ceremonies illegal. Denied First Nations the right to vote. And created the permit system to control First Nations' ability to sell products from farms. Created the British rule for the purpose of subjugating one race, Aboriginal peoples. Major amendments were made to the Act in 1951 and 1985. In the 1951 amendments, the banning of dances and ceremonies and the pursuit of claims against the government were removed. In the 1985 Bill C-31 was introduced. For more on this bill, please see Indian Act and Women's Status Discrimination via Bill C-31 and Bill C-3. Well, let's take a look at that while we're going down these rabbit holes. But yes, thank you. I am Canadian. I'm definitely going to have to. I'm just going to open that link so that I. So this is the book. It's a national bestseller by Bob Joseph. 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act, helping Canadians make reconciliation with Indigenous peoples a reality. I definitely will be picking that up and taking a look, because it's an area where I feel like as a honky, I know some stuff, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff I don't know that I need to learn. So, Indian Act and Women's Status Discrimination via Bill C-31 and Bill C-3. Indian Act policies subjected generations of Aboriginal women and their children to a legacy of discrimination when it was first enacted in 1876 and continues to do so today despite amendments. Federal law in the late 1800s that defined a status Indian solely on the basis of paternal lineage. An Indian was a male Indian, the wife of a male Indian, or the child of a male Indian continues to be a quagmire of discrimination and disrespect towards women. While there have been numerous amendments to the Indian Act, Indian status continues to be transmitted by male Indians, never by female Indians. So if your mother is Indigenous and has a child, then you may not be considered an actual Indigenous person, even though your Your mother is. From 1869 until 1985, 116 years, if an Indian woman married a non-Indian man, she and the children of the marriage were denied Indian status. As a honky cracker alabaster white MF, you are obligated to learn Mr. Gene. Yeah, absolutely. Yes to more of these in the future. Excellent. I will take that as endorsement, and we will do that. I will plan to do. I don't know if I'll do like every week. I'll need to take a look at how many videos there are. If there's a bunch of them, it might be like every other week we do a good long segment and review one of the videos. But I really like that idea. So cool. I'm glad you guys are on board too. So where was I? In 1985, the Indian Act was amended by the passage of Bill C-31 to remove discrimination against women to be consistent with Section 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, included in the 1982 Amendment of the Constitution. Coming into effect on April 17, 1985, Section 15 provided that every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to the equal proportion and benefit of the law without discrimination based on race, nationality, or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, or mental or physical disability. The report of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, 1996, notes that strong concerns have been raised among Aboriginal people regarding Bill C-31's effective replacement of original Indian Act discriminatory provisions with new ones. For example, as noted in the Bill C-31 Study Summary Report, bands that control their own membership under the Act may now restrict eligibility for some of the rights and benefits that used to be automatic with status. Moreover, sex discrimination, supposedly wiped out by the 1985 amendments, remains. Thus, for example, in some families, Indian women who lost status through marrying out before 1985 can pass Indian status on to their children, but not to their children's children, the second-generation cutoff. However, their brothers, who may also have married out before 1985, can pass on status to their children for at least one more generation, even though the children of the sister and the brother will have one status Indian parent and one non-Indian parent. This shit is so fucking annoying. Because, you know, like, I've met honkies who are as honky as the day is long, that have status cards because they're, you know, 1/64th Cherokee princess, as we all fucking seem to be, except me. And yet, you know, actual, like, my mother is Indigenous and now I'm cut off, or I'm not cut off but my children are cut off. Like, that's so fucking weird. And it's a free ebook that will contribute to your understanding of Indigenous peoples in Canada, an overview of Indigenous self-government. I'm going to have to open that link in a new tab as well, because I want to check that. Amendments to Bill C-31 provided, and you know what, I'm just going to copy the link, and I'll paste it into the chat in case anyone wants to also read that one. So that link that I pasted there is a link to this free ebook that will contribute to your understanding of Indigenous peoples in Canada. Amendments to Bill C-31 provided a process by which women could apply for reinstatement of their lost Indian status. While such an amendment looks good on paper, it proved to be extremely difficult for women to actually execute the process. The first of many hurdles was the then Department of Indian and Northern Affairs documentation system. The numerous requests for additional information, coupled with the department's significant underestimation of the sheer volume of applicants and its inability to process the applications due to inadequate staffing levels, frequently left the applicants in prolonged states of limbo. Besides the daunting magnitude of red tape involved, a more heartless aspect of the reinstatement process was the cost applicants were forced to bear as they traveled from sometimes very remote communities to centers that had DIAND offices. That's the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs. Plus the cost of research and documentation fees. These costs and travel requirements simply put the dream of reinstatement, which opened the door to better health and education services for the women and their children, out of reach for many who were already financially marginalized due to their lack of status. You know, I'm just going to say this right now. This idea of status, conferring additional benefits, that should be just as easy as fucking pie. If you're an Indigenous person, and I don't want to know where the cutoff is, I don't want to be the one to make that claim, but if you're an Indigenous person, you should just be fucking able to have the benefits. That should also extend to people who are Inuit, who often get ruled out of these things, or groups who don't belong to a reservation but belong to a township, or you know, whatever. Like, there's a million ways that they game the the verbiage to continue to exclude certain groups, which is deeply stupid, totally frustrating, and absolutely not the goal of what we're trying to do here. Bill C-3, introduced in March 2010, was supposed to be the remedy, but actually continue the discrimination because the status reinstated is of inferior status. Grandchildren born before September 4th, 1951, who trace their Aboriginal heritage through their maternal parentage are still denied status, while those who trace their heritage through their paternal counterparts are not. These bills do little to change the relationship of the Indian Act and women's status. Canadians, blah, blah, blah. We thought you might be interested in this related article, The Indian Act and the Right to Vote. We cover the Indian Act in our Working Effectively with Indigenous Peoples course, which we offer publicly and on-site at a location of your convenience. And then here's a link to the book itself about the 21 things you may not know about the Indian Act. So this was a bit of a very cool rabbit hole. Yes, First Nation, Inuit, and Métis, all three. Both status and non-status First Nations, by the way, unconditionally. Yeah, it should, to me, there shouldn't be a pissing test that says, you're Indigenous or you're not Indigenous. Not only that, but I feel strongly that if you are claiming the 164th Cherokee Princess thing, you should have to back that up before getting any kind of status. I don't know where the cutoff line is. I can definitely say that I've known people who have been way past that line, in my estimation. But do I know where to draw it? I absolutely don't. The good news is I am a honky, and I shouldn't be the one making that choice. That's got to come from Indigenous people, it's probably not a cut and dry kind of thing. All humans are, wait for it, Indigenous. Sigh. It's true all humans are Indigenous, but that's again play on words. We're all from somewhere, and some of us are from, I could argue poorly that I'm Indigenous because I was born in Canada, but I would not make that argument because when you say an Indigenous Canadian, you're specifically talking about Inuit, First Nations, and Métis people. And the further, when you get to the outskirts and you into the 164th Cherokee Princess and all that kind of stuff, I feel like at that point I'm not the person who should make the decision, but we really ought to be making it so that all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people have access to the services and supports necessary. The idea of whether it's by the paternal or the maternal or whatever, like if they're Indigenous people, they should have the same rights and freedoms as other Indigenous people. And if they're Canadians, period, they should have access to proper health care. They should have all of this kind of shit. I feel like it's complicated in certain ways, but in a lot of ways, this is really not that very complicated. And what we have historically done is try to create our legislation to ensure that we keep the Indigenous people on reserves and that we isolate and demean and demoralize Indigenous people who are not on reserves. And I just don't think that's okay. Color me weird. I nominate Big Ugly Jim to be the decider who decides. You're it. Oh, no. The last thing this world needs is a self-professed honky telling Indigenous people whether they're Indigenous or not. I really strongly feel like I may not be the person for this job. Self-determination, equal in politics, there is no European Act. Exactly. And there shouldn't be a European Act, and there shouldn't be an Indian Act. Or if there's an Indian Act, it should A, be renamed, and B, accurately reflect the values that as a country I believe we have, which is wanting to work together and wanting to empower Indigenous people. All right. It's time. It's time for some weekly humiliations. I'm going to start off with a little ditty by the Keith Morrison Band. This again was the recommendation of my delightful friend I Am Canadian. And I Am Canadian suggested that I sing one of the songs from one of my old bands. I chose Page 29. I actually have to get the lyrics because I don't know them. And we'll see how this goes. I have the lyrics. Where are they? Oh, I've got to open up this because I saved them. And are you going to open? What's going on here? There we go. Okay. All right. Let's. Oh, I got to put my humiliation screen up. Even though, you know what? I don't have to put my humiliation screen up yet because I don't have video to go with this. This is just audio. Hopefully, this all works. And hopefully, I don't fucking butcher it. Can't understand what's wrong with people. Perhaps the clothes they wear, or maybe, baby, it's something deeper inside. Find it kind of funny, honey, sitting in my front porch, and I watch the new beginnings setting a hitchhike. Notice your heart was a lot like mine. Notice your heart was a lot like mine. Hit the road by tomorrow, headed to the Highwood River Friday afternoon. And man, I wish you were riding in my van. Met the king of Australia, he kissed a girl from Canada, had a baby daughter and then he took them home. Back home making families, miles from the past. And I still recall the way those rap guys laughed. Hit the road by tomorrow. Oh, story about the windows, computers slow me down. Oh, me, the baby, we're all trapped inside. Laughing on a Sunday, I think it was a Friday night, and I close the door and the sun begins to rise. And I close the door and the sun begins to die. And I noticed your heart was a lot like mine. And I noticed your heart was a lot like mine. And I noticed your heart was a lot like mine. Hit the road by tomorrow. Definitely weirder than I expected it to be. 19 miles of nature came knocking at my door. She stood there so wet on my front porch. Stood there kind of silly, pretty little thing. She hitched a twister down from the north. Said there ain't nowhere else for me to go. I still got my key in the morning, I will go. I said, baby, you never ever have to go. I said, baby, you never ever have to go. Hit the road by tomorrow. I think you should do an original karaoke every stream, yours or folks in the community, you know. That's actually not a terrible idea, honestly. I should definitely do something along those lines. I like that. I'm gonna steal your idea and pretend like it was mine all along. It's weird, the background vocals are so gone in here. If I can't really show you what I'm talking about. But all right, that worked. I'm satisfied that I did not do too terrible a justicing. Weekly humiliations. I gotta pause this, and then I can switch over to my weekly humiliations view, which looks a little bit like this. Sea of all my base are belong to you. All my base are belong to you. I feel like my head is very big, so hopefully this is good. And I'll be singing along while my child makes pizza. That'll be fun. All right, here we go. Oh shit, is this like... Oh my love, come with me to the sea of love. Come with me, my love, to the sea of love. I wanna tell you how much I love you. Do you remember when we met? That's the day I knew you were my pet. Creepy. I wanna tell you how much I love you. Come with me to the sea of love. Do you remember when we met? That's the day I knew you were my pet. I wanna tell you how much I love you. I sure hope this is the bad karaoke. Stop boot fucking the camera. It hurts when you look at me. Come with me to the sea of love. Do you remember when we met? That's the day I knew you were my pet. I wanna tell you how much I love you. Boot fucking the camera. How am I boot fucking the camera? Besides just, being this ugly all day. Alright, and then some Bon Jovi. I hope this is horrifying. I don't know if it's in my range. I just saw it and I was like, ooh. Oh, right. I remember the beginning now. But where does it come in? I think I know. Once upon a time, not so long ago. Or maybe that was wrong. No, that was wrong. Once upon a time, not so long ago. Tommy used to work on the docks. Oh, it's too high. He's down on his lucky stuff. Fuck. So tough. Gina works the diner all day, working for her man. She brings home her pay for love. For love. She says you gotta hold on to what we've got. It doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. We got each other, and that's a lot for love. We'll give it a shot. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, living out of make it, I swear. Whoa, living on a prayer. I feel like you're being disingenuous, I am Canadian. Tommy's got his strict thinking heart. Now he's holding in what he used to make it talk so tough. Ooh, it's tough. Gina dreams of running away. She cries in the night, Tommy whispers, baby, it's okay. We gotta hold on to what we've got. It doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. We've got each other, and that's a lot for love. We'll give it a shot. Whoa, living on a prayer. Take my hand, we'll make it, I swear. Whoa. Living on a prayer, living on a prayer. Cue the electric guitar solo. You're hard to listen to? Yes, I am hard to listen to. Oh, this is like a key change, isn't it? Ooh, we gotta hold on, ready or not. You live for the fight when that's all that you got. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer. Take my hand, we'll make it, I swear. Whoa, living on a prayer. Whoa, we're halfway there. Wow. Oh, this is not my range. Living on a prayer. Take my hand, we'll make it, I swear. Whoa, living on a prayer. I wish this was fucking halfway there. Come on. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with Bon Jovi. I'm fucking done with Bon Jovi. I will do one other song because it popped into my head. Oh no, no, I won't. You know what? Let's do Time Warp. Because why not? Why the F not? Yeah, John Bon Jovi does have a pretty good range. He's just also horrible in every way. Little Rocky Horror action. It's astounding. Time is fleeting. Madness takes its toll. But listen closely, I do see what you did there. Not for very much longer. I've got to keep control. I remember doing the time warp, drinking those moments when the blackness would hit me and the void would be calling. Let's do the time. Oh shit, I'm off on the notes again. Let's do the time warp again. Just a jump to the left. And then a step to the right. With your hands on your hips. Bring your knees in tight. And it's the pelvic thrust that really drives you insane. Let's do the time warp again. Let's do the time warp again. It's so dreamy, all fantasy free. So you come see me. No, not at all. In another dimension, with voyeuristic intention. Well, secluded, I see all. With a bit of a mind flip, you're into the time slip. And nothing can ever be the same. You're spaced out on sensation, like you're under sedation. Let's do the time. Oh fuck, why do I screw that change up? Let's do the time warp again.
Well, I was walking down the street just to happen to think when a snake of a guy gave me an evil wink. Well, he shook me up, he took me by surprise. He had a pickup truck and them devil's eyes. He stared at me and I felt a change. Time and I never would again. Let's do the time warp again. Let's do the time warp again.
Just a jump to the left.
And then a step to the right.
With your hands on your hips.
Bring your knees inside. But it's the pelvic thrust that really drives you insane. I'm seeing toes, but they go, let's do the time warp again. Let's do the time warp again.
You know what, that was fun. And I'm going to do Sweet Transvestite. Because, fuck it, I'm going to do Sweet Transvestite. And trans lives matter, and trans people are people, and trans men are men, and trans women are women, and that's just fucking that. That was fun. Yeah, you were actually making me giggle all the way with the toast, more toast, a ton of fucking toast. I enjoyed the shit out of that. All right, I think that's it. I think I'm good for the day, which is you know, it's a little bit early, but that's just how shit's gonna happen right now. I'm all out of beer, and by that I mean I have 10 more in a case in my bedroom. I will not be drinking them all today. I will not be doing any science. It's going to be a no science day. It's going to be a getting shit done day. At least laundry. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Stay happy, stay good, stay healthy, all that kind of stuff. And I will see you when next I see you. Hopefully, well, for sure by next week. If not, if I don't end up streaming on some random Tuesday or whatever. Either way, take care.